Good stories have these things. There's always a conflict. There's always a problem in a story. If a story does not have a problem, it's not a good story, right? We think of any problem or any story that we love, any movie that we love. If there's no problem in the movie, we're not watching it. We're bored. So there has to be conflict. And then there has to be some sort of resolution along the way. It doesn't have to be that everything's resolved, but the problem gets resolved in the story. And then the biggest part of a really good story is there's some sort of transformation. You go from the caterpillar to the butterfly. We think of transformation. There's so many ways we can transform, but the problem is transformed by the end. And the hero of the story has also been transformed through this process, right?
Welcome to this week's episode of the Scalable Marketing Machine Podcast. This week, we are going behind the scenes inside of the Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator Program, where we have guest speakers each and every month come in and share a workshop mastermind to share their expertise and help to up-level everyone in the program. So I'm pulling back the curtain and letting you listen in on Amy Schutte's presentation from last month. She is a brand strategist and founder at Hudson and Co., where she uses neuroscience, storytelling, and powerful visibility strategies to build businesses and brands that get seen, get heard, and get results. She talks all about how to use story to drive conversions, what stories you actually should be using, and she lets us in on her Spark framework that is going to absolutely knock your socks off and make you feel completely ready to start using storytelling effectively in your marketing and branding. So get a pen, get a coffee, settle in. This is a really good, actionable episode, and I can't wait to hear what you think.
We're always asking, can you help me solve my problems? Can you help me solve my problems? And so when, as brands and businesses, if we can constantly be entering into our customer story in a new way, then all of a sudden we're engaged in their story, we're engaged in this story. It just changes the thing. So I love storytelling. It's amazing. Okay, this all sounds great, right? We all know all of these amazing things about stories. There's some more quick things like storytelling can increase conversion rates by 30%. There's all these stats, right? But story's kind of hard. Like, let's be honest. If story was easy, everyone would be doing it and everyone would be doing it well. But a lot of businesses struggle with story. And here's a couple reasons why I've seen over my career as a storyteller and a marketer. I'm sure you guys have other things that you're seeing in your company, but a lot of times they're focusing on themselves, not their customers. A lot of confusing features with emotion, right? We like to just say, here's all the things that we can sell you without like connecting it to an emotion. A lot of scattered message, a lot of inconsistencies. People keep saying like, I need help with my messaging. They don't even understand what messaging is. They don't leverage the power of origin stories, which we're going to dive deep into today. They don't understand narrative structure. So that can be interesting when brands are really trying to tell stories. They'll just kind of use a different narrative structure. Or they don't have no structure with their stories. They underestimate the power of visuals. Our words are really powerful, but our visuals are also incredibly powerful. They play it safe, or they think storytelling is a one-time thing. Oh, we've written our brand story. We're done. Like, this is it. We're good to go now, right? But if everyone did that, if we've all written our brand stories and we're not getting traction, we've got more things to do here. So just a quick overview. I'm Amy. I'm a brand strategist. I'm a founder of a communications agency called Hudson and Co. We use neuroscience, storytelling, and powerful visibility strategies to build businesses and brands. I started my work as a journalist. So storytelling is something that I have loved since the beginning of my career. And then I moved into marketing and PR consulting for domestic and international companies. I'm a certified business coach, former story brand guide, and I know Victoria loves story brands, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And if you find me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, feel free to DM me the word origin, and I'll send you a guide to crafting some magnetic brand messaging if that's helpful. Okay. Part of my work in the world has to really help brands create these stories. And so I created a Spark framework. We do not have time to go through all of this today. But I love to really take people through a very thoughtful process on how are we getting our stories? How are we putting them into place? So Spark stands for stories, perception, actions. There's a roadmap involved. And then Victoria, you love this. You're the KPI queen. We got to look at data, right? We got to know, are these stories working? Is our marketing plan working? Is our brand working? And so I like to put them all. But today we're just going to talk about story. And I want to just talk about, what is a story? What does that even mean, especially when it comes to your brand and your marketing? Good stories have these things. There's always a conflict. There's always a problem in a story. If a story does not have a problem, it's not a good story, right? We think of any problem or any story that we love, any movie that we love. If there's no problem in the movie, we're not watching it. We're bored. So there has to be conflict. And then there has to be some sort of resolution along the way. It doesn't have to be that everything's resolved, but the problem gets resolved in the story. And then the biggest part of a really good story is there's some sort of transformation. You go from the caterpillar to the butterfly. We think of transformation. There's so many ways we can transform, but the problem is transformed by the end. And the hero of the story has also been transformed through this process, right? Now, a big secret sauce for storytelling is that good stories have meaning. They mean something. There's some sort of emotion involved. So if we're telling a very routine story, oh, I have a problem. I need a car. I'm going to go buy a car. And now at the end of the story, I've been transformed. Now I have a new car. Like, that's the most boring story in the world. But we can make that story really good with emotion, right? We can add emotion of how hard we work for this thing, what went into this, what we had to sacrifice to get there. There's all these pieces, and emotion is the key to every good story. And you can see that when you're looking at really good brands and how they've used story in their commercials, in their Instagram lives, and any other piece of content that they're creating. This is really important too. They've done studies on this as well, that companies that use story have to also include these three things. There has to be authenticity in the story. So when we're creating stories, it must be authentic. So if you're the one telling the story, if your founder is telling the story, whoever is telling the story, it has to be connected to authenticity. People are so tired of fake things. And so this authenticity piece from companies is very, very critical. We also need empathy. We need this empathy piece of, we've been there, we get it. Or maybe we haven't been there, but our customers have been there and they are also frustrated with this. So we have to have this empathy piece in our storytelling at all times. And then bonus points if you have purpose in your story, because we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And so just like onboarding employees into your purpose, you can get customers involved in your purpose too. And so having a purpose story is really critical to brands these days as well. People want to believe in what they're buying. They're paying attention now in new ways. And if they aren't paying attention to what you guys are doing yet, you need to give them a reason to realize, what is the purpose of our company? So those are the three things every company needs to have. And then, it's actually more than 5. Sorry, I added a few more for you today. I'm going to talk to you about the origin stories that I think every company needs to have. And when I say origin story, people go, oh, the founder story. And I'm like, well, yeah, the founder story is important, but you need a whole bunch of other origin stories that you can pull from and use, because again, storytelling, you have so many different audiences that you need to be telling stories to, your employees, your community, your clients. So we always have to be ready with a whole bunch of different stories to use in our lives. So the very first story is the brand story. And I know Victoria has gone over this with you. This is your overall brand story for your company. It's critical. It's so you can say your elevator pitch really quick. It's so everyone in your company knows how to talk about things. If you have a large company, which I think there's a lot of big companies here, you need different stories for each of your divisions. Oftentimes you need the umbrella brand story, but then each division needs its own smaller story. And I love using the story brand framework or pointing people to that story brand framework because it's amazing to help people get there. I'm not going to go into that today, but I would highly recommend reading that book. It's an incredible way to write your brand story overall. But oftentimes after people have their brand story, they're like, well, okay, now what? Like, what else do we talk about? We still need a ton of content for other things. So The next story that you need is your value story. And this is wildly critical these days, but this is your why are we doing this and what do we believe story. This is your values. And I'm always amazed when I go into companies, and I've done this work with hundreds of businesses, but I'll go into their companies to give a workshop and I'll ask, like, do you have your values? Like, what does this look like? And most people in the room have never even done a value exercise for themselves. I'm curious on this call, and if you guys are close to your computers, is there a raise of hand? Have you ever done value work for yourselves? Can you say that these are my values that I'm living my life by? Can we get a raise of hands if anyone's ever done this work? Okay, I see one. Okay, yeah, values are really critical these days because people, again, going back to the authenticity. Oh, Wendy, good job. Okay, we really want to connect with people that have similar values to us, and values are a way for us to really start looking at: are we leading this brand in the right place? So there's company values, but executive teams need to know what their values are too and what their founders' values are. And so doing this work is absolutely critical. I love doing this work with companies because it's such an aha when we start to realize, oh, okay, our value is integrity. We're saying that, but we're not actually living that. And so, again, this may be more of an internal brand building piece, but we have to have values in our brand stories. Another origin story you need, of course, is the founder story. And a lot of founders don't want to talk about their story. They'd like to hide behind things. I don't know if are there any founders here, but the founders I love to work with, they're like, we're building this to sell. We don't want to be out there. But your founder story is absolutely critical for investors. It's critical for your employees coming in. And just like Victoria mentioned, Sarah Blakely, that thought leadership that can come with the founder story as a personal brand can have a huge ripple throughout the company. So do we have marketers in here? Does anyone feel comfortable like raising your hand? Do you guys struggle with having your founders tell their story, show up? No?
I think we definitely do.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to point to anyone in particular, but I know there is some struggle with some of the marketers. So we've got marketers and founders here. Some of the marketers that I know struggle with getting stories from their founders, right? That the founders are want to put themselves out up front with their story that maybe they don't think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Shy to show up on LinkedIn, shy to be that thought leader, all of that stuff. But it could, again, I love what Wendy just put in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. She said, facts tell, stories sell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really true. And sometimes the facts around the founder story could be the missing piece because it humanizes a lot the business, right? And more we want to do businesses with humans as things become more and more automated, right?
100%. So if your founder isn't comfortable sharing their story, there's so many ways to get founders. And I've worked with brands that are, operating at that $10 billion mark, and their founders are like, we've gotten this far. We don't need to talk about our story. But if you're looking for ways to mine the stories, the founder story is always incredible because it's something that if there's 10 different pet food companies, but one has been started by, two brothers. They saw a problem, they went after it. No one can take your origin story from you, right? And so when we are again competing in a noisy world and we're all doing very similar things in the world, story is our currency. And so we can really make a difference in the market with our thought leadership or stand out in a different way. And the founder story is one of the best ways you can do this.
I also want to chime in because you just sparked something where, even the founder story, even if the founder does very little of like, the face to face with the client, all these things, there are some really incredible founder stories of founders like doing it themselves first, right? They were, putting up roofs for X amount of years, or they were working in a factory for X amount of years and they climbed up. And this point right here, the second bullet you have of trust, that is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, yeah, you can say the values of the company, but trust, right? Can I trust you with my investment to work with you? Can I trust you with my money? This is incredibly important. And that's where, the integrity behind whomever is at the helm of the company can be incredibly influential, right?
Absolutely. And if your founders don't feel comfortable telling that story, which a lot of founders don't, but if you're in a marketing role where you get to have access to them or you're the VP of sales, learning those stories and then being the person that tells it on their behalf, just about the company in general, is just as powerful. So if you really have founders that are like, absolutely not going on LinkedIn, I'm not doing this thing, I will not be in that interview, that's okay. But you can have brand spokespeople where, again, just like the founder I talked about at the beginning, he gave us all stories. So could I repeat his story right now? I definitely could. I could tell you about how he borrowed the $10,000 from his in-laws and had this product in the back of his car, and he drove up and down the East Coast trying to sell it to people. And now they are a multi-billion-dollar brand. This is a good story. He doesn't have to be here to tell you that story. So again, we can tell our stories or get these stories downloaded and then share them in different ways within our company. It doesn't just have to be on your website. It just doesn't have to be in your PR. It can be with your people too, right? We can all hold these stories and tell them. But again, you're right, Victoria. It's all about the trust. It's all about the credibility, and it's all about standing out in a different way. Are there any questions? I'm kind of going faster. You guys, are we doing good?
This is great. We're absorbing it all, and I think we can save the questions for the end if everyone wants to.
Yeah. All right. We love this point, right? The problem story. We all have to have a problem story. What is the problem that we're solving? And then most importantly, how is that problem making what does that problem make our customers feel? So this part is really important because that emotion piece when it comes to storytelling comes in the problem. And we have this external problem that we're solving at all times. And then we also have this internal problem of our customers are frustrated, they're annoyed, whatever it is, whatever type of business you have, you wouldn't be in business if you weren't solving a problem. So get very specific and very granular on what the problem is and then how your customers are really feeling about it. And that should be something that everyone in your company can repeat. Another origin story you need to have in your story bank is really the product offer story, right? How are we delivering our clients success? What does failure look like if they don't use our product? But we have to be very clear on what success and failure look like for them when it comes to our product and our offer. And as I said earlier, a lot of companies struggle with storytelling because they're really focused on the features and the benefits and not necessarily on the emotion. But the product offer story is really a transformation story. So instead of going into we can offer this, this, and this, and this, and this, obviously we want it to be clear. We want people to understand the value that you're bringing to things. But going back to this idea of if I can tell you a story about this offer, about this product, it absolutely changes how people's brains are receiving those facts and that information in a whole different way. And there's lots of really cool ways to do this. Okay, connected to that directly is the transformation story. We have to be able to tell the story, and even better if our customers can help tell the story for us. So if you are not getting testimonials from your customers, if you're not asking for reviews daily or have an easy process for this, you're missing out on gold because our customers can tell us their transformation. And going back to the authenticity, the trust, the credibility, we trust what other people are saying, right? It's why we read all the Amazon reviews before we buy things. So testimonials have to be part of your marketing process and have to be part of mining stories. And if you're not doing this daily, weekly, monthly, you're missing out on some really great stories. All right. This is a really good story to have in your back pocket, but this is the paradigm shift story. So how are you doing things differently? Why is your way better? Again, it's noisy. So I can be telling you stories all day long, but this story is one of those persuasive stories that has like really amazing conversion because I'm able to point out what is going wrong in the industry and how we are different, how we are standing up to the big guy, how we are doing whatever it is. This is a story where you get your teeth out a little bit and you can say like, we are trying to do things different. We can do this in a really kind way. We don't have to be intense with it, but the paradigm shift should start to shift how people are thinking about your industry or what you're providing and bring them over to why your way is a better way. So this is a really powerful story for you to have. And then another story that we must have these days is the generosity story. So this is, how are you giving back? How are you practicing reciprocity? Is your, if your value is to be, a quality something or other, whatever that value story is, we have to back it up with, well, how are you actually being generous in your business, in the community? Now, again, will this sell you all the things? Will people buy just because you're generous? I don't know. We can look at examples like Tom's shoes. I mean, there have been movements around generosity. And so people love a generosity story. It has to be authentic, so we can't make things up. But it needs to be tied to what you're really trying to do in the world. So if you're founders or as marketers, if you don't have a good generosity story in your business, now's a really great time to get one. Okay. I wanted to just give you an example with Warby Parker too. Can you guys see this? It's a lot of text. But I just wanted to show you how you can take all of those stories and combine them into one place like they did and really start to use this in your marketing. Because again, you have all these stories. Now, what do you do with them, right? This is a really cool example that I pulled, and I just highlighted these cool things of just showing you it's easy to tell these stories. You just insert them in little tiny places all over the place, and it helps build this brand. So for Warby Parker, I love this, right? They start out with, there's a problem. Glasses are too expensive, right? That's the problem. And then they give us a tiny problem about one of their founders. There's the founder story right here, but the cost of replacing the glasses were so high that he was squinting, he was complaining, right? We can just imagine how that made him feel. He was frustrated, he's annoyed. So we've got a founder story, we've got problem with emotion. And then here's the thing, the eyewear industry is dominated by a single company that's charging people a ton of money. So guess what? We're going to do something about that. We're going to provide better, higher quality glasses, but it's at a fraction of the price. So here's the paradigm shift with the product, which is cool. They're combining it there. And then here's their value statement, right? We believe buying glasses should be easy and fun, should leave you happy and good looking with money in your pocket. So that's their company values. They know that's my value as a customer. So they're bringing that right into their brand story. And then at the end, they end with, we're also giving back, right? We've got this buy a pair, give a pair. We've got generosity in here. So over and over again, you can use all your stories in one place, or you can weave them in different ways. But this is such a cool example, just right off their website about page, of how you can use all of those things and turn them into really good stories.
Yeah, I just want to double click on this for 1 second, because actually this is a story that I knew. Like, I heard this on an interview with them about the founder losing his glasses, and like that stuck with me forever. I was like, and it's simple. I think what I love about this example you pulled is it's like, it's not fancy. I mean, the founder that you worked with that had up and down the East Coast, the product at the back of the car, that's like a very dramatic story. This isn't, I mean, this is a very common kind of, it's not like a very special or different story, but it's just the fact that there was a story, and it's so tangible and something that we've all probably experienced, any of those of us who have glasses or contacts. So it's so great. But I just wanted to talk 1 minute about where we use these stories,
Yeah.
because I heard this founder story in an interview. So on podcast interviews, on, in articles, if you're working with a PR agency, this is where the stuff can really come out. In your content, right? On your website. Anything else you can think of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you should be using these stories everywhere, right? Like you're onboarding with your employees, on your website, in your content, in your thought leadership. Your entire executive team needs to have these stories and be using them in their thought leadership on, on LinkedIn if they're writing articles. But you're right, Victoria. PR is a great place to mine them. And again, the rule of 7 doesn't work anymore, right? The touch point of 7. So you have to just keep thinking, how can we keep telling these stories over and over again in a way that makes sense for people in different places? So here's a couple things. Yeah. Good thing, Victoria. Oh, you just led right into this one, is like where to do it. But create a bank of stories, like have these. If you have a great executive team, I put hire a copywriter in here because writing these stories can be hard. So if your team is big enough, and oftentimes we don't have the right people in house to actually be doing this stuff. So if it is hard to get this from your founder, if you guys are running 1,000,000 miles an hour, which you probably are, don't be afraid to hire someone that knows how to pull stories out of people and then help you create a bank of messaging and stories. and then use them everywhere, right? Your internal, external communication. And then also you want to test these stories because not all stories are going to perform well. So we want to give these stories over and over again, just like Warby Parker has tested this, obviously, a bajillion time. And it's a good story. It's simple, it's easy, it's effective. But go back to the narrative structure of like, there's a conflict, there's a resolution, and there's a transformation, right? Like just start dialing in. What do these stories need to be? Who needs to tell the story? Sometimes the janitor has the best story, right? We've got to start figuring out ways to mine these stories in a way that makes sense for you, your business, because again, this should be a process that you do often. It shouldn't just be the once a year thing where we're like, oh, we have a new marketing campaign coming up. Like, what stories are we telling, right? This should be something that you are constantly mining and trying to figure out. Another quick thing, this kind of goes into the perceptions piece of the Spark framework, but building that story bank with these people in mind, right? You've got your clients or your customers that you need to build stories out for. That's critical. We have to get sales. But also, depending on your business, you have colleagues or contractors or other people around you that need to understand your stories and be able to tell them for you. Your employees are gold, so make sure you go there. And then your community story is also really important. If you're on Rotary, if you're on the Chamber of Commerce, right, you need to be able to have these stories ready to go and have them practiced, rehearsed, able to give at a chamber event or something like that, where you're a networking event where you are just ready to connect with somebody else. Because again, if you have a referral based business, or if you're working at a really high niche level and digital marketing is not your jam, but you're getting it from other people, right? We have to be ready with these stories. So just think through how you are talking about your stories. It's not just for your customers, it's also for this kind of audience. Okay, that was hopefully helpful. I would love to know if I can answer any questions or go deeper into any of those stories. But thank you so much, Victoria.
Okay, I want to kick us off with the first question, and then you guys raise your hand as you have questions. But how would you like? What do you think that? Okay, if everyone's like, I'm on board. You gave us a lot of different types of stories. How would you kind of organize? If we wanted to make a Q2 goal of like focusing on getting the stories together, like how would you suggest going about like a project?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have this full Spark framework, which we would love to know a little bit more about what each piece is. But what would be like a way that we could execute kind of putting this together? Because it does feel a little bit like nebulous. Okay, we grab these stories out, and then what? Do you have like a process that you could suggest on how to kind of gather and then implement?
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be individual for each company, but let's say you're working on getting a marketing campaign up and running. You have big sales goals. You need to have a marketing campaign that supports it, right? Then you need to really go back and start looking at, do we have the right messaging that's for this specific problem that we're trying to solve? Do we understand, again, because a lot of these stories, the founder story, a lot of these are PR stories, right? These help build the brand. So when you're looking at it from a project, Victoria, what a great thing. But if I'm building out a project and I want to write messaging for this specific marketing campaign, I'm going to want to know, do we understand the problem that we're solving? Do we understand the transformation? Do we have some testimonials? Do we understand what this looks like? But I would run it as a messaging project where it is very clear, where I'm sitting down with the stakeholders of whoever, is it me as the marketing VP? Is it the product developer? Is it our innovation group? Like, who is the person that has the answers to these stories? And then organize them in a way of, who are we talking to? What's their problem? How do we solve it? What's our success here that we can, or the solution for them? And then what's the call to action? Like, so it's really clear. And so once you have that information, and it can take some time depending on how big your company is, but you need to be able to look at it from a sales perspective, a marketing perspective, a pricing perspective. So it's a little bit of a research project at the beginning, but if you have a small in-house group, you can look and say, what are we solving here? And you don't need to make it really crazy and fancy. Put it all in a Google Doc and really just label it like problem, solution, pricing. But again, you want to go to different sources if you do have a bigger group to make sure you're getting the full picture so you can actually write a marketing campaign that's going to perform.
I think that is really helpful. And I think that there's a couple of us in here that are particularly struggling with this product offer story. Because
Okay.
this is the thing that in my opinion, I feel like the pace of technology, I feel like I'm an AI chatbot, right? The pace of technology is moving so fast, right? And there, I feel like there's a lot of distrust that's coming into the market, kind of just due to AI, right? I think AI, like, there's just so much content popping out. And I feel where, for any of us that are trying to make offers online, right? Or even just like through sales calls and stuff. I think that
Yes.
there's a little bit of I think we're living a little bit of in a distrustful economy right now. So
100%.
how would you go about refining? So you just talked about kind of the elements of this offer story. Would
Yeah.
you suggest like making several variations of this story to kind of to test on, and
Yeah.
any tips or tricks there on really like how to implant more trust and authenticity during this kind of offer story?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So oftentimes we want to look at this. And again, are you asking from a digital marketing perspective, or are we also talking like this B2B where we're doing more traditional old school sales
I
calls?
think we
What
do
do we
have
have going on here?
we definitely have a mix, but
Okay.
I think I'm talking specifically for us that are doing things more online.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the beautiful thing with online is we have access to so much data now, right? We have analytics, we can A/B test things, we can run ads and see if they're performing, right? There's things we have to do ahead of time. So we can't just say, oh, that ad situation flopped, right? We've got to like build our toolbox so we're able to test this messaging and if it is converting. But a lot of times I just go back and ask my clients when we're looking at this thing and I'm like, okay, let's take you out of it for a second and look at this. Would you trust you? Like if I come to your website and like you're so close to it, right? We're all so close to all of our stuff, but like have you told enough stories so that I trust you? Have you built this over time? The trust is earned. It's not something we can do in one single marketing campaign. So oftentimes, and it depends on like the price of the point, right? If it's a
Right, right,
$27 offer, okay, I maybe don't have to trust you that much. I can buy
right,
that PDF and whatever.
right.
But if I'm paying you $25,000 for something or $100,000 or it's a $500,000 contract, trust is earned in a different way. And so we have to really understand what kind of brand we're building and all the brand assets that go along with it, and then be able to take ourselves out and say, have we given people enough information in different ways and stories to be actually able to have them trust us? And if we say no, like, ooh, we're just kind of like running it on a shoestring over here, hope it works. Okay, like that's okay. You can use the data you have. You don't have to have a huge audience to do this, but you can start to say, I haven't been seeding the conversation. I haven't been planting these things. I haven't been showing up and showing people my authority and credibility in the space yet. And so, oftentimes, Victoria, I think what you're asking is like, how do we do this? Oftentimes, there's a lot of trial and error, but we have data to use. And then we also have the power of brand, which is so many things that we always have to keep looking at and refining and making sure. Are our links broken?
Yeah.
Is our logo working for us? Have we built a brand that people want to trust? And if the answer is we're working on it, that's great. Then you just know it's a continual process. If the answer is
Yeah.
yes, then great.
You also sparked this for me, in when I'm doing, and a lot of us, we talk a lot about like website, right? Like user experience.
Yeah.
And so whenever I've hired agency to do like a UX audit, one of the things that they do is they'll pass the website, like the website homepage, to several people and do like the 5-second litmus test, almost
Yes.
like, do you understand what this site is about? Do you understand what they're selling? All these things. But what you said just sparked me. It doesn't matter if you're selling like, we've got a couple of folks that sell like a couple $1,000 products. They're trying to sell it online. We've got folks that just want to have them create an account, right? But it would be interesting to send that to people, because I think there's one thing for you to look at it from a different perspective. It is a little bit difficult, but you could of course send the offer or an email sequence or whatever to colleagues, to other just friends, and just say, does this make sense to you? Would you? Because oftentimes it's just so juicy because we
Mm-hmm.
miss so much,
Mm-hmm.
like on our own. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
100%.
Okay, but I just want to open it up to questions for everyone. Thank you so much, because we're gonna end the recording here and get into the juicy conversations. So everyone can kind of talk about their specific situation.